very special guest, live from New York. Syed Akbaruddin, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, joins us a few days after a stirring win by India at the United Nations Security Council, where despite the efforts of Pakistan, there was no broad-based condemnation of India's position on Kashmir. Islamabad says that they'll use each and every venue to argue their case. But in terms of a cogent international reaction, there seems to be very little that backs their demand so far. Joining us now, Ambassador Akbaruddin. Ambassador, thanks very much for speaking to us, for joining us live from New York. Pakistan has always made their attempt to approach the United Nations Security Council as a very, very big deal. They say it's something that's not happened in several decades. But as we understand it, the meeting was essentially informal. It was behind closed doors and more in the form of consultation. So was this a proper Security Council reaction or a much smaller sort of meeting which they managed?
So Vishnu, the world has, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to express my views to you and through you to your viewers. Now, those who think that what happened on Friday is part of the continuum from the last meeting in 1965 or 71 are perhaps unaware that diplomacy, the essence of diplomacy is nuance. And in terms of the consultations last week, these are not formal meetings, these are not recorded, these are free-flowing conversations which are not held in the Security Council chambers. They are in a small room where members have in recent times discussed anything and everything under the sun. So if any one member wants to do that, this is usually agreed to. However, for a formal meeting, it requires a majority support to put this on the agenda formally. That means 9 out of 15 members have to vote for supporting such a meeting. Therefore, if I was to say that what happened last week was a informal consultation, which is in the form of a conversation, which actually made it quite clear to everyone that India's approach enjoys broad support globally. And that is the outcome of that consultation.
So, Ambassador, going forward, Pakistan today says that they're going to now approach the International Court of Justice. They say they will go to use every opportunity internationally to project their case. Do you believe that the next battle will be fought at the ICJ since they intend to take it up from a legal standpoint?
So, I don't know. Every country is entitled to use every course available to them. We also have horses for courses. So we have different approaches. If they would like to tackle this in a different arena, we will address it in that arena. It's an arena of their choice. They tried once, they did not succeed. They want to look at other arenas. This is their choice. Also, our preferred arena, we have listed it. What they will finally decide is for them to do, but we hope that they will recalibrate, taking into account what was the outcome of last Friday's informal consultations.
Ambassador, as you would have read, the Defence Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, the Union Minister, Jitendra Singh, have said that going forward, should there be talks between India and Pakistan, there would need to be talks about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. This is not a change in India's position, but a re-emphasis of something which we have perhaps not stated very deliberately in the recent past, by which I mean the last couple of years. Does this make your position in the United Nations more challenging? Do you believe there may be opposition to this from international countries?
So, Vishnu, let's take it step by step. I had made it very clear that we abide by a bilateral track which was put into place through the Simla Agreement, and there have been further developments on that. I haven't heard any response to that request, which was made loud and clear repeatedly. So first, Pakistan has to tell us, are they interested in that bilateral track? And only then we can get into what we will discuss on that bilateral track. So let's move step by step in this. Let's not jump the gun. The bilateral track means that they eschew terrorism. That means in accordance with our mutual commitment that their territory or territory under their control will not be used for terrorism. These are all very solemn bilateral commitments that both of us have agreed to. So let's wait for them to make that first clear. We will then look at the next steps. Okay. I am only a foot soldier who works in the trenches implementing government's policy, and as you have listed, these are not new nuances that we have articulated. We've articulated in the past too, but let's move. As diplomats, our job is to try and work out a format where we can narrow differences. At this stage, we are not there.
Ambassador, just in terms of the use of language by Islamabad, there's been a lot of intemperate language, a lot of threats by the Pakistani Prime Minister, by others. As a first step, do you believe bringing down this level of verbal animosity is important as a first step towards a larger process? You're not saying talks right now, but a larger process is how I would phrase it.
Entirely. For any effort to succeed, you must create an atmosphere. And today, the rhetoric that is emanating from across the border is not conducive to any serious exchange of views. So, yes, I think there would not be anybody who would be opposed to what you're saying. In fact, what I heard at the Security Council or informally among many delegates was that everybody in the world wants, first of all, to have some sort of de-escalation of rhetoric. And that will always be the first step before any other steps are to be looked at.
Ambassador, the Prime Minister has spoken to the US President. President Trump has also spoken to Prime Minister Imran Khan. In the past, we have always said that the hyphenation of India and Pakistan needs to end. We have a separate relationship with America. They have a separate relationship. We bring a lot more to the table perhaps than they do. But do you believe that when the US President sort of says that he's spoken to both leaders and he hopes that both countries bring about peace in their region, that hyphenation which we have not wanted is somehow back on the table?
Again, Vishnu, there is no hyphenation. Look at the engagement that we have with several countries, including the US. It's a broad-based engagement. It covers not only issues of a political or peace and security nature, but it covers the entire expanse of our ties. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether you can even make that comparison. And that's our USP today, that the world looks at India as a country with which they can engage on a host of issues, whether it is climate change, whether it is development, whether it is space, whether it is sustainability issues. There are a whole host of issues on the global agenda. And on each of these, India is one of the important players. I don't know whether you can say that of our neighbor across the border. And if that is not so, then where is the hyphenation? We are far ahead. Let's not even look at those terms. Those are terms of a bygone era.
Ambassador, the issue of China. Pakistan seemed to suggest that they had had overwhelming support from Beijing at this limited United Nations Security Council meet, if I can call it a meet at all in that sense. But do you believe that Beijing's response to to the situation in Kashmir has been almost entirely muted as far as the changes we have made on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir, and pertains more to their typical areas of concern in other parts of Ladakh.
So let me try and summarize their approach. Their approach is not a mirror image of what Pakistan's approach is. We are engaged and have had conversations with them on they are willing to sit and listen to us, try and take into account what we are saying. So already we are miles ahead in terms of our engagement with them compared to what Pakistan says. It is Pakistan loves to try and link themselves up with China, but our understanding is that there are clear differences of trajectory, nuance, as well as substance in these two approaches, and we are ready to engage and clarify if it requires further with China, and we've had these conversations at different levels with them.
Ambassador, last couple of questions. You have your own distinctive style of diplomacy. You've always had a sense of humor. You've always been very forthright, and you're known to do a few things which nobody expected. The other day at that sort of impromptu press briefing, there were a bunch of journalists from Pakistan who were rather keen to jump into the situation, and you did this gesture which nobody would have expected. You went out to one of those journalists, I believe a Pakistani national, shook him by the hand and said the process starts here, or something to that effect. How did that thought suddenly strike you? What were you thinking then?
Vishnu, public diplomacy is not only about words. It's about actions, it's about symbolism, and I decided to be a symbol of what I am speaking. It's just that true. It was a bit of a surprise for them, but it should not be a surprise for anybody who knows that Indian diplomats are known to think on their feet. And that's just a reflection of our confidence and our ability to take on all comers in a situation of their choice.
And Ambassador, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the only one who took questions, right? The Chinese ambassador, the Pakistani ambassador, they didn't take questions then. Is that right? It was just you?
Yes, both of them spoke before. They were making prepared statements.
Right.
And I must confess, they took us by surprise in making those statements, because our understanding was once the Security Council by consensus agrees not to make statements, none would do so. So we had, say, 8-10 minutes to respond. And so our responses were very quick, and much of these are stem from our belief in what we are saying, rather than a structured, prepared, well thought of response. Sometimes these work, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to do so, and it worked to show that we are an open society, we are a democratic society, we have difficulties. If you put anybody under a microscope, you will see warts for everyone.
Well, Ambassador, it's always a privilege speaking to you, and it's been a fantastic week of Indian diplomacy at the United Nations at a particularly challenging moment for us, and your spontaneity in dealing with the situation at so many levels is something that we've all looked upon with a great deal of appreciation. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Ambassador Akbaruddin, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, joining us there from New York. Thanks very much for being with us.